Dzień dobry, witamy widzów kanału Spożywcza TV, a także portali hurtdetal.pl, wiadomości spożywcze.pl i agronomist.pl i zapraszamy na program Gabinet Spożywczy. Ja się nazywam Wojciech Szeląg, jest ze mną pan Michał Siwek, dyrektor Departamentu International Food and Agri Hub w banku BNP Paribas.
Dzień dobry Państwu.
A naszym i Państwa gościem jest pan Igor Tikhonov, prezes zarządu Kompanii Piwowarskiej S.A. Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry Państwu.
The company has not only been able to adapt to difficult economic conditions, but has also shown a dynamic sales and financial performance. How this situation evolved over the years?
Well, thanks for the question. It's a difficult one. As we all remember, 2019 was the last normal year, right? And then 2020 and 2021 have been hit heavily by COVID. And at the end of the 21, we already seen the increase of prices for aluminium, for some raw materials, even before this current Ukrainian crisis. And if I answer to you in short, basically the company was focused on premiumization through portfolio activities, and at the same time we've been controlling the cost base very rigorously. So it's the recipe of two ingredients. But if I go broader, our company deployed the strategy which was based on 4 pillars. It's planet, people, portfolio, and profit. And every element of this 4P has its own meaning. And if I speak for the planet pillar, Kompanii Piwowarskiej historically have been quite environmentally focused, right? Our water usage and water consumption is quite low, and in a recent year we started to focus on CO2 emissions quite deliberately. You may have heard that at the end of 2019 we signed the virtual power purchase agreement with Energy that time. And now, over the last couple of years, 100% of all electric energy we buy, it's going through sustainable sources from the farm at Nowy Świat. So it's a great instrument for us to reduce CO2 emissions in all our breweries. So our CO2 emissions dropped for 66% versus prior period. It's massive. At the same time, we're continuing actually our activities to even reduce CO2 emissions through transportation, because for beer transportation means a lot. You can imagine hundreds of trucks running like every day. And if some of our partners like Eurocash, we organized optimization scheme with that we limiting number of trucks and minimizing the trip time. So, and also helped us to reduce CO2 emissions for another 6%. So we're looking at CO2 as being one of the big issues. So then moving into people agenda, again, people are our main assets, and we want to stay competitive, and we carry a lot of responsibility, especially in difficult years. And we think about ourselves as being responsible employer. It's very important for us to retain the jobs for people in the crisis situation and the difficult situation. And second comes the health and safety, because obviously during the COVID time we've been putting all these kind of measures to make sure that our employees are less exposed to this COVID infection, right? And at the same time, we've been not only focused on ourselves internally, but we were also supporting the clinics in Białystok, in Poznań, and in Tychy. And we donated about 1.3 million Polish zloty to ensure that those clinics, they do have necessary materials to treat the patients in the cities. So, and continuing on our internal agenda, speaking of people pillar, we provided about 13,000 trainings during the year, which is like 4 trainings a year per person, including online and classrooms. And we're also part of International Lead Association. It's a new initiative to support leaders supporting advancing diversity. So diversity and inclusion is also quite a big part of our initiatives. We want to promote gender diversity, and we want to promote inclusive culture inside the organization. Then moving to portfolio strategy. Well, arguably Kompanii Piwowarska among all the brewers have the best brands. You're not surprised to hear it from the president of the company, but it's true. I'm particularly proud of brands like Tyskie, which is going to be celebrating 400th anniversary in a few years from now. 400, imagine. Then we've got Żubr, and this is the brand which has a lot of connections to environmental agenda as well. With Żubr particularly, we are sponsoring the Białowieża Foundation, and I may mispronounce it, it's BZEPSA, another foundation which actually in charge of biodiversity in the region. And with our help, those foundations have been able to extend the land piece for the preservation of Żubr. which is great addition to our environmental topics. So, and then obviously Lech, it's the Wielkopolski brand coming from Poznań, which have a lot of equity and power. And obviously in portfolio agenda, we've been focused mostly promoting the brands which, in the segment which are growing, right? Which have more potential to grow, and it's a premium brands and also the modern drinks like flavored and non-alcoholic beers. And the final one, profit, and obviously profit comes as a sum of those activities which we are undertaking in people and portfolio and even planet part. And obviously in the last couple of years we've been rigorously controlling our expenses, looking at minimizing unnecessary marketing spend, and obviously big outdoor events like sport events and even music festival have been cancelled, unfortunately, right? And Horeca have been suffering as a result of closures. And we were able to optimize our spend in some promotional activities and some marketing support. So a combination of that have helped us actually to deliver the financial results which were not worse than the peak which we achieved back to 2019. That is the recipe.
You said about 4P. In fact, in Polish conditions, it's 5 because piwo, beer, also starts with P. Yes.
So maybe it's not coincidence. But anyhow, sir, the beer market in Poland seems to be mature. What are the developments of the key segments of Kompania Piwowarska brands, and which segments have recorded the highest growth dynamics?
Well, you're absolutely right. The beer market in Poland have become mature already, like quite a few years by now. And if we look at recent PARPA report, actually first time back to 21, I think they recorded the reduction of beer consumption per capita, which was quite significant. It moved down from 99 liters per head back to, I think it was 2018 to 94, which is 5 liter per head reduction, which is quite visible, right? Which tells us about the impact of COVID and also socio-demographical changes which Poland is going through. And that's obviously a worry, and it's the obviously strong sign for not just for our company, but the whole industry to develop new propositions, new liquids, new brands to make sure that the consumers, the modern consumers, the younger consumers are actually staying in the category or finding the product which is keeping them attractive. And speaking of different segments, unfortunately, the big part of Polish market, which is represented by lagers, have been under pressure and have been reducing, though the premium part of lagers, specifically driven by international brands, have been growing. And in our case, we've noticed quite a good growth, quite significant growth of our corporate brand Wielkopolski Kozel, which came from Czech Republic and successfully growing in Poland. At the same time, new proposition, new flavored beers like Captain Jack, a funky stuff for parties, have been growing very nicely, strong double-digit growth. While at the same time, we've noticed that brand like Żubr have been able to retain its shoppers and consumers despite a difficult time. So it's a careful selection of sub-segments, and some of them have been growing nicely.
What about non-alcoholic beers? We can see that consumption of them is bigger and bigger each year. How do you deal with that in Kompania Piwowarska?
I'm very pleased, and it's part of our agenda, it's part of our company and Asahi group agenda actually to promote the non-alcoholic or low alcoholic beverages, right? Because we believe it's a future of the category. The segment have been developing in Poland for many years, right? But over last, I would say, 3 years, we've seen the rapid growth of non-alcoholic beers, and it's driven by competition. So that's the time when we can say competition is good, right? Competition forces all the players in the category to come with new products, and bring new flavors, new liquids, new brands, and we've noticed quite substantial growth back to 2020-21. Unfortunately, in 21, the growth rate for non-alcoholic drinks reduced a bit. Maybe it's partially because of the COVID, maybe it's partially because the summer was not so hot, and we believe there is still potential in this segment. At the moment, non-alcoholic beers in Poland represent around 5 to 6% of total market, and in some neighboring countries, it's already reaching 10%. So there is a way to go up, and I'm sure that young consumers, they will continue like those kind of drinks.